Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pichael with another solo edition of the Infinity Edge podcast. The games just started, so I don't have any information about the results from today. But what I wanted to start off with was a look at some of the implied ownership versus the actual ownership that we're getting in the matches from today. So I have a new setup. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand how everything's going to look on my screen. Okay, so let me get the money lines and matchups and stuff like that onto my screen. So first up, let's take a look at the first match. We have XL and SK Gaming. XL is minus 161 favorite. SK Gaming is a plus 125 dog. Supposedly, yeah, they XL put out some kind of troll thing on Twitter saying that they were going to change up their lineup, but they didn't. So I think it kind of scared the shit out of a couple people in my Discord, but it looks like they just ran out their normal roster. So first, we're going to take a look at the implied ownership and the actual ownership. Okay, so we have SK Gaming. So as an underdog, SK Gaming with that money line was supposed to have around 9% ownership, throughout their individual players. The way that I came up with this is that you take the implied win percentage of their odds, and then you divide it by 5. So that means that SK Gaming had an implied win percentage of 44% at plus 127. Divided by 5 is 9%. Let me actually take this as well. It's a little different, so bear with me. Yeah, this is basically what I'm working off of here. So yeah, this might just be an easier way to see it at first. So the line is 127. The implied win rate is 44%, and if they win 44% of the time, they are going to be the highest scoring team, theoretically 9% of the time. That's if it's just completely random, not completely random. It is based off of their win rate divided by 5. Because if they win 44% of the time and they're one of 5 winning teams, if that was distributed like 1/5 to each team, then you'd multiply those two numbers together and you get 0.9. So you could argue that if they have a 44% chance to win and it was purely random, that number would change a little bit, but not much. I think this is an accurate way to do it. At least it's the way that I do it. So if I'm wrong, explain to me mathematically why I'm wrong, and I'd be happy to learn. So let's look at the individual spots, because this makes a lot of sense, right? So SK Gaming was probably used more as secondary stacks than as primary stacks. So you see the closer percentages are with the team slot, because you can use that as a secondary slot or a one-off. I did a little bit of that with a one-off SK Gaming to combine two favorites. Then I had Jezu and Genax as the most popular secondary stack. So if you think about it, like one of the most popular lineup constructions is getting 4 players from your primary stack at the AD carry, jungle, mid, and support positions, and then you get a top laner from a different team and an AD carry from a different team and a team slot from a different team. And if you just want to do the easiest stack possible, this is the one that you would probably pick. It gives you the upside of having one of the primary carries from the team. Genax is one of the better players from SK, which I think I've said pretty often. And then new support player, so people probably have less confidence in the new support player. People probably have less confidence in treats because of the role swap and everything. So you have really low ownership on SK. So that means that they're under-owned. So if SK wins, there's a couple percentage points left on the table that you could try to take advantage of. And I think that this is one of the main things that the super high rollers use to justify their percentages on underdogs, because just mathematically, this is where they should be owned. Right? I think that's accurate. So let's take a look at this. For XL, the other side of things, XL is also underowned. So we can ask ourselves, why are both of these teams underowned? Both of these teams are underowned because people have less confidence in their ability to actually play to the implied win percentage, and then also the perceptions of the team. So if our perception of XL and SK are both lower kill score teams, then both of these numbers should be lower. You could make the argument that since it's two lower kill teams in general, that it should reduce the 1 in 5 odds of being the best DraftKings scoring environment, and reduce that somewhat considerably. So that's pretty interesting. Nuke Duck at 12.5%. That's weird. I'm not sure why that would be the case. I'm not sure why Nuke Duck would be so much higher than Patrick. Actually, there is a way to see why that could happen. Let me take a look at my other sheet. So Nuke Duck was less expensive than Patrick by a somewhat considerable amount, 600 less. And if they're both the primary carries on the team, then it should be 50-50 that one of them is the highest scoring player. Now that Jungle's more involved, it's like probably closer to a 33% chance of the highest scoring player on the team. But again, that's why Dan's up a little bit more. Both the jungler and the mid laner do have more of an impact in the early and mid game. You see a lot of really high kill participations on junglers right now specifically. So I understand why they would go that direction. But that's just for the first game. Let's go to the second match. The second match is Schalke against Misfits. So let's do Misfits first. Misfits are the favorite. They are at minus 172, which is 63%, which leaves you with the 13% that we would expect them to be owned, and they are significantly higher, which is surprising against Schalke, because Schalke is typically not a team that you'll see giving up a lot of kills in their losses. They did yesterday, which maybe this is artificially inflated because of that. The other reason why this could be inflated is because of the salary. So Misfits is much lower, is priced much lower than most of the other favorites. XL is the only one that's a lower priced favorite. And Kabe is very, very cheap. So I thought that Kabe was going to be a very popular play. He's about 10% over-owned. Vetio, who's had more flashier plays, is even more highly owned. Razork is even more highly owned. Misfits team being owned this high means that a lot of players are using Misfits as a secondary stack. So this is just an interesting thing to take a look at from time to time to see, which teams are super popular. And I think this does suggest that they're somewhat popular, which is surprising to me. And then we take a look at Schalke. So Schalke is viewed as a live dog by most people, and the ownership percentages are a lot closer. Actually, they're about the same. So they're slightly underowned, which is a necessary thing. When you have teams like Fnatic, G2, Rogue, Misfits that are going to eat up all this additional ownership, you're going to have a lot of the dogs just completely fall off a cliff for ownership. So again, we have an AD carry and a top laner as the two most popular players on an underdog team. That's because they fit in well with the other primary stacks. If you see right here, I guess this means that some people were using Nuclear as a part of Schalke primary stacks and also as part of their secondary stacks. Kure very low owned for a starting jungler. And I get it, because players want to have junglers who have been scoring a lot of DraftKings points. They want to make sure they have access to that upside. from the more likely winners. Okay, so that's game 2. Game 3 is Rogue Astralis. Rogue Astralis. So Rogue is the biggest favorite on the slate, implied to win 82% of the time, which is very high. And then that means that all of their players should be about 16% owned. And this is the kind of thing that I love to see. Even though Rogue is an extremely high implied, even though Rogue has a very high implied win rate, the only player who is over-owned is Han Sama. So that means people are incorporating Rogue into their lineups at like an easily justified mathematical level. So Han Sama, you want to get him in a lot as secondary stacks. So if you think that Rogue isn't a great primary stack because they don't have the same kill upside as the other teams, then you incorporate them into your lineups as secondary stacks. You get access to somebody like Han Sama, who does have good upside. He's 7.5% over-owned. At the team slot, they're right about where you would expect them to be. Everyone else is right about where you'd expect, except for Adewamne, which is somewhat surprising. Maybe he's overpriced. Let's see if he's overpriced. Adewamne is the second highest, so people probably don't want to pay for Adewamne at that level because he hasn't really been producing as much from a fantasy perspective, I'm guessing. So, very cool to see. One thing that this tells me is that Han Sama is probably someone who has stickier ownership because I think players just in general like playing AD carry captains and jungle captains more than mid captain. So there's probably something to expose there for mid captain. Once the patch changes, by the way, mid lane is going to get much more powerful. The reduction in cost for the AP items is going to make people feel a lot more comfortable playing around that item spike. Whether or not that should be the case, I don't know. I'm not sure, but it will help. It will help a lot. You might see a lot more AP junglers, because like that's the thing is the change is intended to help mid laners, but once they make that change, like because they're reducing the price by 200 on the main AP mythic items, that's going to impact other lanes just as much, if not more, because top lane, jungle, and support have less access to like gold in general than mid laners. So we'll probably see some other kinds of champions poke into different lanes because of that item change. Just checking out the SK game right now. SK is 1 dragon up and 1 kill up, which is interesting. Let's go to the next game. Or did I do it was Rogue Astralis, right? So they're all under-owned, but not by much. They're right around where they should be. So let's just move on to the next one. The next game is Vitality against Mad Lions. So Mad Lions, in a tough matchup, are significantly under-owned. I did not expect this to happen. So, and I did kind of talk about it. Like, I guess people do believe in Vitality, that they'd be able to win back-to-back games, which is just very surprising to me. So Mad Lions just completely under-owned, and then you have Vitality. Vitality is owned right around where they should be. Sorry. Yeah, so Vitality's right around where you'd expect them to be. Crown Shot coming off of a good performance, I think. That's not surprising. That is a substitute. Labrav, that's whatever. Leader and Self-Made right around where they should be. So this means most people think that the line was relatively accurate, and they like the upside of Vitality in a match against Mad Lions. Mad Lions is a good team to beat. generally for DraftKings reasons, so I totally understand why that is at that level. And then the last game of the day is Fnatic and G2. So when you get Fnatic playing against G2, they're two of the most popular teams in Europe. They're two of the best DraftKings teams in Europe. This should be a great game environment for DraftKings and potentially for even game stacks. I think I ran a game stack out there, at least one game stack. So you have Bwipo 14% overowned, Upset 13.5% overowned, Niski 10% overowned. And again, this is just relative to what their top stack percentage should be. So I don't know, maybe the percent drafted, like you could make the argument that you can't really compare those two numbers because the percent that they're drafted into a lineup isn't necessarily the percent they're drafted into the primary stack of a lineup. But I think that probably weighs like who your captain is too much. So again, I do think this is a useful exercise, but I'd be interested to hear if there's pushback on that. So G2 is a little bit more consistently owned as the favorite, but Fnatic is very, very owned. So G2 losing just doesn't matter. G2 lose, okay, that's fine. I'm going to throw all their players in my lineup again. Their team slot is under-owned, which means that not only are they highly owned, they're also highly owned as primary stacks. So that's basically it. So like I said, I think that's a very important exercise to go through. And since they're not playing tomorrow, it's going to fill up a lot of the time for this video, I guess. How much time did that take? 17 minutes? Whatever. I hope you enjoyed it. So let's do the LCS for tomorrow. We haven't seen the games yet today. We don't have ownership information from today. I guess I do have it from yesterday, maybe? I didn't prepare that, so sorry. Let's just get into the games themselves. So Dignitas against Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses minus 150, Dig plus 114. I should probably change this. One second. Done. Okay. So let me just get to the LCS. Summer season. Okay. Dig. EG. All right, so I hate Dignitas. I explained that in the last video. Evil Geniuses will be coming off of a loss, potentially coming off of a loss against TSM today. That should drive down people's confidence in Evil Geniuses a little bit, but they're a good enough team. In a game against Dignitas, that's not necessarily who you want to play against for DraftKings, so maybe that depresses their ownership a little bit as well. I think Evil Geniuses is in a good spot. I hate Dig, so I'm not playing Dig. Just hope they lose. Moving on, 100 Thieves against Immortals. So 100 Thieves will be coming off of a loss to Cloud9. What I'm assuming is going to be a loss to Cloud9. Could they beat Cloud9? For sure. So you should prepare yourself for both scenarios. If 100 Thieves beats Cloud9, then 100 Thieves' ownership will be even higher against Immortals just because people have a higher opinion of 100 Thieves. If the perception of Immortals being a bad DraftKings team to play against is overwhelming, then it'll be increased less than you would think. So that's just an important thing to think through when you're making your lineups tomorrow. They're just a much... Well, okay, all right. Let's be fair. Let me go back to the Dignitas Evil Genius game. So Fake God against Impact. Impact is better. Sven Skaren's getting subbed out for Contract. Contract is still better than Acadian. They were both playing in the Academy circuit, or Proving Grounds, or whatever they want to call it. Contract has been better. Jizuke against Soligo or Yasui, Jizuke is better. Danny and Ignar against Neo and Afro Mu. Pretty similar. I think Ignar is better than Afro Mu. I think Danny, with the playstyle that Danny has, is just as good, if not better, than Neo for a more consistent gameplay. Neo does have the high upside that we've seen in DraftKings a bunch of times. But those are my thoughts about the individual players there, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for 100 Thieves and Immortals. So Someday is better than Revenge, Closer is better than Xerxes. That's a close one though. Or closer. It's closer. Abadage is better than Insanity and Pretty, doesn't matter who's playing. FBI and Huki are better than Raze and Destiny, doesn't matter who's playing. So there are chances for Immortals to win that match, but I will not be playing Immortals. I just don't like Immortals. That's basically that. TSM against Team Liquid. This is an interesting game. So Team Liquid should beat CLG, and TSM should beat Evil Geniuses. I think that Team Liquid's win over CLG will most likely be bloodier, and people like seeing that. So I think that after their back-to-back very bloody wins, I think people will want to be all over Team Liquid. It's another spot where this is a spot where you have to play both teams. By the time that DraftKings posts the salaries, they probably didn't post the salaries yet. So by the time they post the salaries for this, I would expect Team Liquid to be the favorite. I want both sides of this, depending on how the salary stuff turns out and how they combine with other teams. So I'm not picking a side here. If I had to pick a side here and only play one team, I would play TSM because they're just less popular in general. FlyQuest against Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians is complete trash, so I'll be playing FlyQuest. FlyQuest lost a bad game to TSM, I think, yesterday, which is just disappointing. They had an early game lead and threw it away, I think. They're up against Dig, so I think FlyQuest will beat Dig, and then I think they will also beat Golden Guardians the following day. Sorry, 1 second. That might actually turn into a phone call. So FlyQuest should be Golden Guardians. I don't expect FlyQuest to get... actually, that could be a very popular spot for FlyQuest. Maybe you should play Golden Guardians in a spot where they could actually win a game. You probably want to play both sides of this one as well. And then C9 against CLG, just play C9. Just play C9. I think that a lot of people will talk about how CLG has... Like, if CLG plays Team Liquid close, people will want to play Cloud9. If Cloud9 loses to 100 Thieves, that'll decrease people's confidence in it. But if it's a G2 situation, then maybe you still get them like 20 to 25% owned everywhere. That's ultimately a decision you have to just make for yourself. I see the reasoning for both of them. Like, CLG does play very aggressive early game. C9's weakness right now seems to be the early game. If they create a large enough advantage in the early game, then yeah, that's just kind of how it works out. So that's basically it. Thanks for tuning in to another solo edition of the Infinity Edge podcast. I'm going to watch the LEC and maybe play some golf. I don't know what the weather's going to do, but that's what I want to do. So thanks again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe the video on YouTube. Whenever we tweet it out and stuff, if you could share that, like it and do all those interactions and stuff, that's also pretty helpful. And if you need to re-up your subscription to the esportsdepartment.com, make sure to use the code IEDGE, IEDGE. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.